Well, welcome to the Waking Up Spiritually podcast. We're so thrilled to have you with us today. And I'm Wendy Rose Williams. I am a past life adventure guide and certified spiritual teacher. And I help people let go of things that just don't serve you anymore, whether it's chronic pain, anxiety, depression, and also free up that stuck creativity so you can feel like you enjoy your life, feel like your life's got purpose and you're on the right path, and be able to feel healthy and just enthused about what's going on. And that can be a big thing because many people are considering life pretty challenging right now. So you are able to join us live twice a month, the second and fourth Sundays at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, or on your favorite podcast app. You can catch the broadcasts later, or via wakingupspiritually.com, which is our website. And if you go to the website, there you're able to also see the PowerPoint presentations that we have for most of the programs. So again, welcome. So thrilled to have you here with us. Love to hear your suggestions and comments for topics. Always looking for suggestions there. And I'll turn it over to Gregg Kirk, my wonderful co-host, to introduce himself and today's topic.
Thank you, Wendy. I'm Gregg Kirk. You can come to my website that has the domain name above my name. So it's Gregg, GreggKirk.com. That's where you can connect with me if you're interested in an energy healing session, either in person or over the phone or even through Zoom. I do sometimes. I run an online group healing circle every Sunday, usually prior to this. And yes, every Sunday, and sometimes it's prior to this, our bi-monthly broadcasts. And in that group, we get together and it's a spiritual laboratory, more or less, where we are doing group meditation and also asking for information from the guides and kind of like what Wendy said, trying to make sense of the different things that are happening in the world today, our role in it, and how to navigate through it. So today we have a topic that is a big one, probably our most heady topic to date, I would say, Wendy. It's the idea of time, the construct of time. What is it? And we're going to do our best to attempt to explain it as best we can. So let me get the our presentation.
Maybe raise possibilities. Maybe that's the best you can do with this wonderful slippery topic, intriguing topic.
Right. Okay, so here we go. Can you see that okay, Wendy?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm going to move over to your, go ahead. Sorry.
So what is time? What is the construct of time? And how can we best think about it? And we know for simplicity, we as humans, because things just need to make sense to us, we tend to organize time into past, present, and future. And that's great. That's a great human construct that we've all agreed on. But what we're going to do today is just peel the onion more and look deeper into this intriguing topic. So past, present, and future, that's a line. I mean, that's a straight line, so to speak, a timeline. But what if it were more complex in reality? What if time was more of a loop or more of a spiral? Because we know sacred geometry just helps us understand so many things. So I often think of a spiral. You're like looping back or looping forward through time might be a more accurate and helpful way to consider time. And then there's also the concepts of time travel. And is that really possible, whether it's with a body or without your body, where you're doing remote viewing and you're leaving your body and time traveling to some other places and times, which is what we do during past life regression. It's what we do when we're sleeping and we're dreaming and we find ourselves somewhere else. So there's just lots going on there. And there's also the concept of portals, because portals are one of the ways that we can use to step into another time. So one of my favorite techniques is if things are really challenging and I'm just struggling with a certain challenge or just multiple challenges, I'll just meditate and create this location, this place where everything is going much more smoothly, or just my acceptance of it has changed and I'm not resisting things so much. And then I just picture myself stepping through that portal, and what would it really feel like if things are going well? And I'm sorry, Henley, my dog's got a couple comments on that clearly. So she wants to comment on those time portals. And then I picture myself just visualizing, things are going smoothly and I'm in that other existence or dimension or that other possibility. And then I bring that to now and I bring it through the portal with me. And I find that just opens up a lot of new possibilities for me. So that's just a suggestion for something to try there. And we do have to ask the question, well, what does time really mean to us if we accept that we have a higher self, we have a soul, we've got that spiritual dimension to us, and that's really the bigger picture versus this single human game that we're playing right now where we're in a certain body and we've got certain things going on. But gosh, what does time really mean to an eternal soul? Uh, Perhaps not very much at all, because we don't have to be playing beat the clock. Oh my gosh, can I rush? Can I get this all done? Can I get this all figured out? Because we can see that eternal home where we go to as souls between incarnations, and we've also got a portion of our energy there at all times. What if we view that as being a timeless, spaceless place or reality? Because I think that would fit a lot of people's description of it. So it's like, oh my goodness, there's no time pressure there at all. It's just like our guides are eternally patient with us because they know there's no time and we're going to figure it out eventually. So if we're struggling with some of those really hard lessons or those big challenging lessons, things like mastering forgiveness, you don't do that in one lifetime or in a couple of years or even decades. That's just a big thing. Or boundaries, learning to have healthy yet flexible boundaries that allow us to just to serve ourselves and be the best us and hold good boundaries with other people. We don't master that quickly either. So I'm glad there's been a lot of time for that one because I know that's one of the areas I've definitely been working on. And also, we can realize and consider there's lots of scientific studies, there's lots of physics proving time actually is quantum, meaning it's all happening now. So again, that's taking out that simple construct and letting go of that past, present, future, because it's much more complex. But I'm just starting to scratch the surface, and a lot of people, your brain understandably kind of goes, oh my goodness, oh my goodness. Now we're into portals and everything happening now. It can just feel like too much. So my point is, know that you do have the capability of choosing what works for you, and your knowledge and your belief system can grow and expand and change over time, and that's great. That's perfectly valid. We don't have to be locked into this one system or this one belief. So that's how I just wanted to open today. Comments on that, Gregg. We certainly can get into the topic of time getting elastic and slowing down or speeding up, which we've talked about in another podcast too.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I'd just like to comment on, I like how the Buddhist describe, or well, the Buddhists like to say the present moment is the moment, is the point in time that you are experiencing reality and have the most control over, right? The present. So that, I've heard sayings of, if you spend on your focus on the past, you'll always be frustrated. If you spend your focus on the future, you'll be living in fear. The best thing to do is focus on the here and now, because that is
Present moment. Yes.
that's what you're actually experiencing, and it is what we call reality.
Mhm.
So somewhere on that band of fluid time experience, reality is our true experience that we can really have the most control over. So
Absolutely. And when you've been with a person that's fully present, just in that moment and having that wonderful conversation or experience with you, and they're not looking at their watch and they're not checking their phone, because we've got so many distractions. We've got more distractions perhaps than ever before. And just, more buzzers and beepers and just all that going on. I think that's why COVID has helped a lot of people go within with that slowdown of some of that frantic pace. But when you're with that person, or when you yourself are just fully present, it feels great. I mean, Eckhart Tolle's books on that topic, those are certainly a great resource in this area too.
thank you, Wendy. I'm going to talk about, whenever there's a huge heady topic like this, I always go to the one source of information that I trust the most with this. It's the law of one. So go to the experts. These experts are the raw beings who came in through channeling, through three people three Americans back in the mid 1980s, and they were able to ask these massive questions to the raw beings of what is time and so forth. So just as a quick basically I've more or less explained it, but for those interested in more information about this is called the law of one, the raw material. The beings are actually called the RA beings. There's 5 books. The people who are connected with the raw beings ask them many questions, and really big questions, things like the meaning of life. What are we doing here on Earth? How is the Earth constructed energetically? I mean, just what about UFOs? Things like that. And these beings, as best they could, answered the questions. Now, every now and then, the beings would say, because of the law of free will, we would be impinging on your free will if we kind of told you the answer to some of these things, because you're supposed to figure this stuff out for yourself. So they would kind of balk on or punt on a couple of questions. But in this particular instance, Don Elkins asked the raw beings, what is time? What is the concept of time? So unfortunately, the other thing is they speak in very obtuse terms. So they basically said there are 2 things going on that people experience, people who have consciousnesses experience. They experience time space, so time/space. They also experience space time. So I'm going to unpack that and make it more simplified. But time space is life, the experience, what we experience here, what the raw beings call veiled life. So it's when you choose to take a life and you're born on Earth, you forget your past lives. Most people do anyway. And you have an experience of linear time on Earth. This is loosely, okay, actually, I'm sorry. I'm describing the wrong experience. Time space is actually what you experience after you die. So let me jump here to what I was starting to explain. So space time, so thinking more of what's more important is the actual space, the space of Earth. So space time is material life as we know it. The raw beings actually call this the study experience. So they're basically saying that what we go through in having a life experience is more or less school. And we experience time in a linear way, like Wendy said earlier, with past, present, and future. And this is a veiled experience. So, you come into, most people do anyway, come into the material life situation, not really remembering very well the past life experiences that you had here. Time space, on the other hand, is what you experience when you leave the material world.
Okay. So that's the distinction.
Yes. So time space is the interim experience after 3D life, veiled experience. It's loosely described. They were being kind to us in saying to us, in terms that we can understand, heaven worlds. So in other words, your heaven experience, it's afterlife. And it's also a time of analysis and study of your space-time experience, your material life experience. This time-space experience, they had an interesting distinction. They said your life is rapid and you experience speed, you have a speed of light experience. So you're moving very quickly once you leave the earth. And I thought that was interesting that somebody who described time recently, I was reading about it, described the experience of time as really an experience of distance. So the faster you speed up, the more time slows down. And of course, this is part of the Einstein described this. This is part of his theory, his theory of relativity. So,
Okay.
So this is a direct quote from the book here, and I'll try to translate it as best I can because it gets a little, clunky wording wise. But since the concepts of space-time, in other words, living on Earth, or physics, and time-space, which is afterlife, or metaphysics, are mechanical, they are not central to the spiritual evolution of the mind-body-spirit complex. I think I might have warned you in past episodes. Mind-body-spirit complex means person. So let me unpack this sentence for you. Since the concept of having a life and since the concept of having an afterlife are not central to your spiritual evolution, the study of love and light is far more productive. So he was kind of gently scolding Don Elkins for, that's great that you want to understand the ideas of how time works and the afterlife and all that stuff. But we're here to tell you that, your experience of learning about love and light are way more. That's why you came here in this life. So the study of love and light is far more productive in this motion towards unity in those entities pondering such concepts. However, this material is, shall we say, of some small interest and is harmless. So again, just basically saying, you don't need to know all this stuff for your experience. Your job here on Earth is to learn about love and light and unity and all that stuff. And, is it a good thing that you learn about time? It's not harmless, so I guess we'll tell you about it.
That's the viewpoint from the bigger picture, that's for sure.
That's from the people who are not experiencing anything that we're experiencing. They're out, they're in time space having a great time, not going through our, heavy experiences that we're having. So, and do you have any comments about that, Wendy?
Just what amazing materials. And as you said, you've just got to work your way through the language, just like getting used to A Course in Miracles and the languaging in it, or learning how to read Shakespeare.
Right. Or
just put the time in and do some unpacking.
I was going to say like the Canterbury Tales or something like that.
Right.
It's the same kind of thing. Yeah.
Okay. Wonderful.
Yeah.
So what I would like to talk through, because I think examples always help when we're in these topics that are more complex or harder to understand, lots of possibilities. And this is what inspired today's talk. Was a listener had posed the question of, well, how can quantum healing work? Because that would imply, if we're healing a past life, for example, can that actually make our life now better? And how would that work? And can it really impact the future also? And I'm here to say yes, yes, yes to all of that. give you the example of my first book, which is Regression Healing 1, The Huntsman, the Lord High Mayor, and the World War II Soldier. And the client in that profound session, he had significant physical pain. He had broken his neck. He had been a professional athlete, and he had just been an adventurer his whole life. So lots of physical pain. So that was the purpose in doing. Can we get him more comfortable, and what's missing? Because he was doing everything appropriate, that he should do with Western medicine and massage therapy and acupuncture and all kinds of things, but still had significant pain that was much as a 7 or 8 on a daily basis on a pain scale of 0 to 10. And that's really life limiting. So what he found was 2 lifetimes where, way in the past, where he had been harmed, really egregiously harmed, which caused that not only physical pain, but emotional pain, because he'd been tortured in one of them, and he had some other really unpleasant things happen to his body in the second one. And the moment we were able to explore those and for him to repeat after me and say, that was then, and this is now. Those are 6 of the most powerful words you can use, is to realize that and to let things go, because that's what he was meant to do. And we found that the missing piece was he had not forgiven those perpetrators. So when he realized, oh my goodness, this was so long ago, and also we're not victims. We choose our experiences. He'd chosen these really, or go through them. We don't choose everything. I do think there's a real beautiful, amazing mix of free will and choosing, and also then and some destiny and some things just happening, because no matter how well you plan, when things are incredibly complex, you don't quite know what you're going to get. But when he forgave, because that was the missing lesson, so when he forgave the 2 parties involved, one of whom was his mother in the present lifetime, that's a huge deal when you can do that. And it just changed everything for him. It was like the weight of the world and all this muscle tension, all this stiffness, all this pain of this unforgiving nature, being there stuck in his field. And when he let it go, it was just amazing. And he said he was able to move so much more comfortably, so much more freely. And he said that his pain had gone down to about a 3. So that was hit it out of the park for me. That was just a huge breakthrough that he was able to have. And he was also able to connect meaningfully with his own higher self, with his own soul during the session, as well as with his guides. He had a sense of his guides, and he'd had some interactions, but he was also pretty frustrated in that area because he didn't meditate. He didn't feel like they came into his dreams. He just didn't know how to get that organized. And what we found was when he'd done his pre-life planning, he hadn't set up that piece of how he was going to connect with his guides. So therefore, the disconnect. So we were able to change that and set it up so that he would have a way to connect with each of them. And he had a lot of guides, and they were quite varied and just all, wonderful and amazing and delightful, just like guides are. Some were ancestors. One was a teacher from when he'd been early in elementary school. So it just was really, really amazing. But that's a great example of a quantum healing that took place across all space and time. we didn't even get the years or the decades or the centuries of these two gnarly experiences that he'd had, where he had been so physically harmed and tortured, and what had led to the two lifetimes of origin for the neck pain and the upper back pain now. But we didn't need to. It just didn't matter. That wasn't the point. So, any comments or questions on that one, Gregg? Does that help with that concept of quantum healing? I know you know very well what it is, but just for listeners to be able to engage in that.
Yeah. There's a lot of people who talk about this, and I think the first author I saw was Brian Weiss. That was the first time I understood the concept of going back in time to finding the source of, a block or an injury or trauma, and also understanding the idea of using forgiveness to release that trauma. It's like probably the most effective way to do that, which ripples through to your current lifetime. So you stop having these infirmities that were caused hundreds of years before. So absolutely. Yep.
Yes. So Brian Weiss's Many Lives, Many Masters, and the other wonderful books that he's written, as well as he now co-writes with his daughter, Amy. And she's very, very lyrical and just a gifted writer and communicator. So there's some great things there. And absolutely kudos to Dolores Cannon,
Right.
her quantum healing hypnotherapy technique. And she wrote 20 books. So look up Dolores Cannon, Cannon, to learn more about quantum healing. So I'd like to give a personal example of something that I went through that I just didn't believe was possible, didn't believe was true, thought was way too out there, way too wacky and weird. So what happened was I began having experiences with a ghost when I was first married, and we had the good fortune to purchase a large colonial home and 2 acres of property north of Boston, a tiny little town. It was 3,000 people at the time, back in 1989. And it's called Boxford, Massachusetts, so north of Boston. And I had these really significant experiences with a ghost that kept coming at nighttime into my dreams. And it went on for the 3.5 or 4 years that we lived in that home. And it was so strong, that energy and that stuck imprint of this ghost from colonial America, young, heartbroken female who just kept looking for her beloved, but he wasn't coming. And she didn't know what had happened to him, and she didn't understand that he wasn't coming. So 3 different visitors to our home. I didn't mention a single thing because I wasn't really sure that I believed in ghosts. And this is back in the late 80s, early 90s. It's not like you can Google and look for good information of what might be going on. I just didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to help her. But I just kept seeing her all the time. My husband just thought it was nonsensical, didn't make any sense to him at all. But 3 different guests separately, the first time they'd stayed in our house, and I checked with them the next morning, how'd you sleep? Do you need any more blankets? Do you have enough towels? Just, generic hostess question. 3 different people said to me, you won't believe the dream I had last night. There's this young, heartbroken woman from colonial America, and she's just so stuck, and she's so heartbroken. And I'm like looking at them like, oh my goodness, this is crazy. How can they have the same dream as me? So we moved from that home. We moved from the Boston area out to Seattle. And I'll be honest, I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't know how to help. It's 1993. So I just shoved it in a box of weird things that happen in life that I don't understand, and I don't know how to make it better or what to do about it. Flash forward 20 whole years, 2013 was when this came up for me again. And a friend had a significant experience with this same ghost coming to her home, but now out in the Seattle area, and told me, I need to share something difficult with you. And she shared how hard it was to get this ghost out of her home and how heartbroken the ghost was, and that she was feeling really sucked into that energy. And she kept telling the ghost, you don't have a body, you need to go on home. But what my amazing friend told me was, that ghost is you, Wendy, and you've got some cleanup to do. And then I'm like, wait a minute, how can I have a ghost, be the ghost if I'm here? I didn't understand the concept at that time in 2013 that we only bring a portion of our energy into any incarnation. That, no matter what body form we're in, no matter what dimension, what planet, we bring a percentage of our big, beautiful soul energy, and part of it's always at home. And evidently, I'd left a portion, a pretty good chunk of my energy that needed healing, that needed a soul retrieval from the 1600s. So I did my work. It just seemed really out there to me. It blew my belief system open. It was just one of those moments where I had to really rethink everything I had believed. And as I did that and realized, once again, it's a story of forgiveness. I had not forgiven the man who ghosted me in that lifetime and had disappeared. And I thought we were going to marry. And I'm this, young, naive, late teens, sheltered young lady in the 1600s. And I think we're going to get married. And instead he disappears. So, and I never know what happens to him. So I had not crossed over appropriately at my death. I did go on and had a good life, did marry, had a large family that I adored. I had 9 children, 1600s, and so many grandchildren. But when I died in my 60s, very suddenly, and this is the hallmark of what can lead to a ghost, because I didn't see it coming. I didn't know it was going to happen. It was King Philip's War, and there was an Indian attack. And I went down very suddenly. I just stepped outside on the front porch to let my cat in, because I could hear my cat yowling, and just went down with an arrow and died. But I just was so frantic because it was so sudden and I wasn't expecting it. I was so frantic. Well, what happened to all my family members? What's going on? How can I help? I didn't rise up. And because the last thing that my that love who had disappeared, the last thing he'd said to me was, you're very special to me and I'll be back for you. And again, I'm thinking this is leading to asking for my hand in marriage. And because I hadn't had that closure during the lifetime for 40 plus years, I thought, oh, well, he must mean now. He must mean we're going to reunite now, because I've died and I've risen up from my body, and I was looking for him, but I couldn't find him. And I didn't realize I just needed to cross on up to home. I just needed to go up to the light. I needed to forgive him and just realize, oh my goodness, it didn't happen. It wasn't meant to happen. We didn't get married. I did move on, but some level of me had not moved on. So just unfortunately, super, super stubborn. And that was not a trait that was that was serving me well. I was certainly not going with the flow. So that's what happened. So we met again in 2010, because when you've got that much energy going on, and I had incarnated in other lifetimes to clean up my ghost situation and hadn't been able to accomplish it. So yay, this was the lifetime. I got it done, and I cannot tell you how much better I felt as soon as I got Anne Warren Little to agree to go on home to the light, and she understood and forgave Captain William Pierce for having ghosted her. So it was a remarkable quantum healing of myself from the 1600s. And again, my health improved so much, my emotional state, my mental state. It really, really was a game changer for me. So that's what happened. So it is official. You can actually haunt yourself. And I think we do it more than, and not always so literally, but I think we do it more than we know, because we can be our own harshest critic and just not have loving language that we use with our self-talk, and just that voice in your head. And it's really powerful when you can start to change that and just stop it right away, when you're being overly critical or harsh with yourself. And it improves life a lot when we retrain that. So any questions there, Gregg?
Fascinating stuff.
Yeah, I couldn't Google. It was, 1989 when it started happening. I couldn't Google, how do I get a ghost to go away? How do I help a ghost? It's just,
Right.
it was 1989. It's just, and I had no idea it was me. I just was not ready for that information at that time. So we lived there the whole time in that house that was physically about an hour and a half north of Plymouth Plantation, where it had all happened. And interestingly, my husband that I was married to for 15 years, I knew him in that lifetime in Plymouth. So it just makes sense when we were back and we were so close to that area again, and I'm with a person that I'd known in that life. And we also had the cat that had been with me, or had stepped outside onto the porch and then had died. I had the same cat again. And more players, once I figured out what was happening in 2013 and got help from several spiritual teachers and healers, because it was really complicated to figure it all out, which was why it became a book and merited a book, me putting all those puzzle pieces together. But found an amazing cast of characters, about 15 people that I met, that have in this lifetime, family members, and some people I met that came and went from my life, that were all a part of that lifetime. I re-met Miles Standish. I mean, it just was crazy of how all the pieces went on. And Captain William Pierce, he was a well-known figure. He brought the most people from Europe, primarily London area, but also some from Amsterdam and other areas, brought the most people over to America. He was bringing them both to Plymouth Plantation and down to Virginia, down to colonial Williamsburg, Virginia. So he became known as the ferryman of the North. So for me to meet him again in this lifetime was really necessary. And he kindly listened to my very out there story of what I thought was going on, and said, I don't understand all this, but I know it's real. I know it's real not only for you, I know it's real for me, even though I don't have the memories of it. And just tell me what I need to do to help you clean it up. And his being willing to do that was what opened the door to that quantum healing, and me getting that soul retrieval to heal myself from that experience.
Wow, all of that is just incredible. All the 15 players, getting the guy who broke your heart to agree to help clean it up is so pivotal and important and amazing.
Yes, because I really held my breath after I told him what I thought was happening. It took about an hour to outline it. And he just looked at me and said, this is so fantastical. I know it's got to be true, because you
Right.
couldn't make up a story like that.
Exactly. It's-
So,
Sometimes it's the crazier stories that they're so out
right.
there that there's no way somebody could invent that, you know. So
Right,
it's
right,
wonderful.
exactly. And interestingly, it was he who actually triggered me into remembering it and putting the pieces together because he was describing an unrelated past life, nothing to do with this one, where he had again been a sea captain and he had died and he had not made it back to his wife or girlfriend, and she was extremely upset, and he'd met her again in this lifetime. He was describing that to me, and all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, I'm sitting across the dinner table
That was a
from the
pattern with
sea
him.
captain. And I'm like, so he'd had that play out multiple
Right.
times. So I think it helped him. I know it helped him because he told me how much it helped him to
Right.
get to clean it up with at
Yeah.
least one person, because that again
He
can
was
have a
recreating
ripple
that.
effect.
Yeah, he was recreating that pattern over and over because that wasn't
Exactly.
resolved. So yeah. Wow.
Exactly. That can create that ripple across all space and all time, or all time space,
Right.
to be able to clean that up.
Thank you, Wendy. Um, let's go to how to navigate through space-time, how to navigate through this time experience that we're having on Earth. Um, so, you know, when you set your life goal, when you're, yeah, actually, okay, so when you're in time space, so when you're in the afterlife, that's when you set your life's goals for your space-time or, you know, earthly experience. Wendy and I have talked about that in a number of different episodes. So, um, you know, so you set your life goal and then you experience the veiling process where you come to Earth, you forget that you set these plans, you forget that you've had past life experiences, but you do have the free will to rediscover what these life plans are, and you can follow that path or not. So that's more or less what the raw beings have said time and time again, that when you're in the space-time situation, the afterlife, or the non-linear time experience, that's when you can kind of lay the groundwork of what you want to do on an earthly life. But it you know, things happen. You come to Earth and you just kind of muddle through. Most people do, unless you can do some things to try to break through the veil. So, as I
And
said,
that's becoming easier. It is just, the veil is thinning. So you don't have to be a quote, a psychic or a channel, etc., to be able to break through. And you can work with Gregg, you can work with me, we can help people appropriately. If their higher self and guide says, yes, that's beneficial and the time is right, you can help you do that.
right. So one thing that I'd like to point out that's so interesting is the time-space experience, as the raw being said, is a speed of light experience. So that's the afterlife experience, or whatever you want to call it. That's a very fast, high vibrating experience. And isn't it interesting, though, that a lot of people, Buddhists, people who do energy work or meditators, try to get, you know, once you come to the earth, to try to get you to slow down or create what's called a stillness practice as a way to thin the veil and to engage with your space-time experience. So in other words, I just thought that was a weird kind of opposite. Like, you know, when you're not on Earth, you're having a speed of light, very fast, high vibrating experience. Then you come to Earth. You would think that you would need to speed up to like get to that experience. On the Earth, it's different. The more you slow down, the more you experience meditation, you slow your life down. The slower you get your calmness, your mind, you stop your mind from thinking about other things. The more you get to that state, that's your opportunity to thin the veil and then to have that space-time experience. So I just wanted to point that out.
I love that. And I think perhaps that's because it's us getting into our heart, because all that speed is typically our left brain. And
Right.
it's just, it's not serving us very well because it's one part of the brain, one part of the whole system, the whole body working too hard. Whereas when you can breathe and get that stillness and get into the heart and then let that be the center, perhaps that's why.
Yeah. So I just want to point out here, your thoughts or your reactions to experiences and belief systems almost entirely shapes your space-time experience, and to another extent, your time-space experience. So in other words, your thoughts, your emotions, how you react to things, that shapes your experience. I love this graphic that you were speaking of Dolores Cannon. I got this from Dolores Cannon's
Okay.
Facebook page. Quantum physics tells us that nothing that is observed is unaffected by the observer. So your reality, just whatever you're observing, gets changed by you looking at it. That statement from science holds an enormous and powerful insight. It means that everyone sees a different truth because everyone is creating what they see. So that's a pretty massive idea, is that you're traveling through. I always equated reality and linear time to a phonograph record. So think about it. You have a phonograph record, or as the kids are calling it, vinyl, the vinyls. So that on a vinyl is all these grooves, right? And it goes in a spiral, like Wendy was saying, time is a spiral. So the only time the record plays is when you get the arm of the phonograph record, which has the needle on it. And as soon as the needle touches one of those grooves, music comes out. Or, that's my analogy of reality. So the only time reality is being experienced is when that needle is touching that groove at that point. Now, at any time, you can pick up the arm and move it to a different groove. You can get bumped to a different groove. So you can jump through timelines, is what I'm saying. But the only time reality is experienced is when the needle is touching, where the rubber meets the road. So, and
you're fully engaged. You're in that moment.
right. And your flavor of how you're experiencing that is your own song that you're listening to, whereas somebody may be listening to a different phonograph record. I've always found it fascinating and also frustrating to listen, because I have one of my jobs early on in this current lifetime is I was a journalist. So, I would find it fascinating that you go and witness an event, and, you have 12 different people watching the event, and you come back and you get about 7 different experiences, descriptions of what happened. It was just
because it's filtered through just people's psyche, and what their filter is what they're picking up and creating.
Exactly. So, there's never a home run on, witnessing something and then describing and saying, this is the end all be all of what that event was. No, it's everybody experienced it differently. So that's the other thing about experiencing time, is your reality is getting kind of like, it's coalescing in real time, all the time, flavored by your belief system, your reality, your emotions, all that stuff. So just wanted to blow your minds even further.
That's great. Thank you, Gregg.
Yep. Wendy, we've
All
come
right.
to, yeah.
Well, I think we've got just enough time, pardon the pun, that I can tell one quick story of time becoming elastic.
Okay.
And this has happened to me a couple times where on a couple occasions, where I noticed that something had changed, because time can suddenly, we can be aware of it suddenly really speeding up or really slowing down. So what I noticed this day, and it seemed like a very mundane occurrence, I'm getting to work, getting to my office building where I worked for years, and I jumped out of the van pool, and I'd been there many times. It was about 6:45 in the morning, still pretty dark out. And I went into the lobby, and I saw that there was an elevator full of people, that was already, just about ready to leave. And I thought, oh, I'll catch the next elevator, no big deal. But the gentleman that was closest to the elevator panel, he stopped the elevator and said, come on, come right up with us. Well, come on. So I was like, okay. So I hurry over to the elevator to join the group. And the minute I looked at him, and he had a name tag on because he was from the elevator repair company. So he's wearing a uniform and his name was on it. And it said Michael. And we started to go up. I worked on the 5th floor. I cannot tell you how slow and beautiful that progression was that day. It's one of the most delightful elevator rides I've ever had, this minute or two in the elevator. And I could feel him helping people. I really feel Archangel Michael was there in the guise of an elevator repairman, but with the same name on. And I could feel time slow down. And I could feel it get like all like sticky, like taffy, and like it was like being pulled and manipulated and moved in the best possible way as he was helping the various people. There were maybe 4 of us, 5 of us in the elevator. And I looked over at him and I just couldn't take my eyes off him because I knew no one else knew what was happening. And I had the privilege of knowing what was occurring. And so we're going up, and everyone had gotten off at a floor before me. And just as I was getting off, I thought, what do you even say, if anything? And all I could say was, thank you. And he just winked at me and gave me the biggest smile as I got off. And he said something to the effect of, you know what's going on. And it just was really magical to just see time change like that, and to know that guides and angels have all the time in the world that they need to work with us. And it really felt like he was doing this cleanup, because we went from the 1st floor up to the 2nd floor to the 3rd to the 4th to the 5th. It felt like it was the dimensions. Because during that time period that I worked in that building for several years, I was able to raise my vibration to the 5th dimension. So I think he was letting me know, just what was going on. But I so appreciated that he held the elevator for me, and then I got to have that experience. I'll never forget it. So just pay attention. It was just like being in that now moment, and something really magical can happen. So please join us for the next Waking Up Spiritually podcast, which will be on April 24th. And you can join us live via our Facebook group, which is called Waking Up Spiritually. You can go to our website, wakingupspiritually.com, and click on the broadcasts tab and see all the episodes there. We now have almost 2 years worth of episodes. Or subscribe to our YouTube channel if you like to get your media there. Or please find us on your favorite podcast app, Apple iTunes, for instance, and rate and review us there, because it helps other people find us too. You can visit Gregg at his website, greggkirk.com, and see all the wonderful things that he's doing, including Gregg's fantastic book. And he's got a new book that'll be coming out. We'll talk more about it another time. And visit me at my website, which is wendyrosewilliams.com. And you're welcome to request a complimentary 15-minute phone appointment with me there, and see how I might be of service to you with a session, or with a program, or some triage, or whatever I can do for you. And we'd love to hear your suggestions as you look at the either the YouTube channel or the website, and see what we've talked about. I'm sure it'll give you some great suggestions, like this one from a listener, of what the heck is going on with time and the construct of time, and how do we really get soul retrievals, and how can going to the past help us now and help the future. So appreciate that, listener, for sparking the conversation today.
Yes. All right. Well, we'll see everybody in a couple of weeks.
Thank you. Be well. Bye-bye.